You're probably like, Kirk, okay, like I've got workflow down. How do I actually mix the stuff that I have, and where do I even start to get my stuff sounding good in the mix? I'm gonna show you right now. So here are 5 tips that I will give you as a beginner to worry about mixing and or get better at mixing. First things first is gain staging, right? So you have to make sure that the things that you're recording in, the volume is set correctly. So let's actually go over here. I use the UAD system here. I have an Apollo Twin and an Apollo X8 as well. And I use these to record my stuff just because I need something like a good signal chain coming in. Now, look at the signal of my voice. You can see that it is dancing in yellow, but it never really goes into the red. And that's on purpose. That's on purpose because I want the volume of my voice to be clear. I want you to be able to hear it and all of that stuff. You can very easily make it so that you can't hear it. So for example, if I take this channel strip off and I take this off and I take that off, look how quiet the signal is, even though I have a preamp on here. So this preamp is doing a couple of things, and I'm making sure that the level is at a healthy level. I'll add that to bring some brightness out, add that to bring more brightness out. And then I have the the 1176, sorry, doing a bunch of compression and bringing my vocal up in volume as well. So this gain staging is important. So this is the first thing you do before you even get to the recording of anything or the mixing of anything. Just make sure your gains are set correctly so that you're not clipping and there's no red anywhere, unless you're using that as a creative tool. Okay, so the next thing that's really important, especially if you have a track like this is my track, Lay It Down, like from before, is subtractive EQ. So you want to make sure before you do anything, any adding or coloring or boosting or anything like that, that you're subtracting. So notice if we go on to this track here, I know I do it on every single track. I'm actually cutting out a lot of information before I'm boosting it. So I usually will cut out a lot of low end, all this stuff down here, because a lot of people won't hear it anyway. And this stuff up here, a lot of people won't hear it anyway. But obviously you have to remember each track, you need to EQ it for the signal. So for example, if I'm listening to these hi-hats have high frequencies. They don't have a lot of low frequencies. So I cut out all these low frequencies. So I can go here and just notice how there's really nothing here that's registering. But if you don't cut that out, it will build up later on in your mix. So you want to make sure that you cut out those frequencies that are not necessary and not, integral to the sound that you're using. So this is going to be different for different like instruments, like your kick drum. You're obviously, you're going to want to keep it in a certain space, So we have that, and then we have this right here. So clap. Notice I didn't actually like do any EQing. It just sat really well in the mix, so I didn't have to. But my bass, I totally EQ'd. So I could have kept it really like bright like that, but then my vocal doesn't have space. In order to have space in your mix, you got to start cutting away frequencies and just kind of shaping things. Think of it like a big Lego like model or something that you're making. Each piece needs to fit with each other piece. So it's the same thing. Each synth and each vocal, they need to fit well, and they all should have their place in the mix. Everything should be able to shine really well in the mix. Try not to have a ton of overlapping things. And if you're finding yourself overlapping a lot of things, try to take some things away and see if they even need to be in the mix. That's a free one for you. Okay, so here's another thing that it took me a really long time to understand, and it's called compression. And there's several different ways you can actually compress. There's sidechain compression, which I use a lot in dance music. And then there's like just regular compression. For example, if we take a look at my vocal chain here, I have a compressor right here. So this is basically a fast acting compressor. It's got really quick release, really quick attack, and that's because I talk fast, and so I need it to work fast. For this, that's how I'm using it to like catch all of the peaks in my voice, so the highest of highs and the lowest of lows, and I'm trying to squash them together so that they're more consistent and that you can hear every word that I'm saying. This is a great way to grab detail out of your voice. It's a great way to grab detail out of any sound that you're using, like a guitar or a bass or anything like that. It's a great way to do that. So compression, think about it like this. It will make loud sounds quieter, soft sounds louder, and it acts like glue for your tracks. You can compress a single track or you can compress a whole group of tracks. So remember in the other section, we talked about these stacks. So say I wanted to compress all of these synths together so that they fit better. I could go in here and then grab this compressor and throw it on there, and I can affect the whole group like that. So bring the threshold down so it's doing something, change the ratio a bit so it's a little bit more, change the attack so it attacks a little bit quicker, and I could keep the release there. And I could change the auto gain, turn that off, turn off auto. Sometimes you might want to keep that on, so I'm going to keep that on. So we're getting, if you look at this meter, we're getting about 6 dB of compression. So usually when you have 6 dB of compression, you can then turn up, your makeup gain to get that volume back, because the compressor will bring the loud sounds quieter, right? So the easiest way to think about compression is to just kind of like glue things together. Think about compression as your glue. So first you EQ, you pull out all the sounds, the frequencies you don't need, and then you grab that glue and you kind of squish things together. It actually like does wonders to your tracks and makes things clear and intelligible. Okay, so here's another thing that is super important when you're mixing. It's using time-based effects really, really well. Okay, so time-based effects are things like delays or echoes or reverbs. And when I first started out, I used to use reverbs all the time, and I used to just slap so much reverb on my tracks. And that was just me not knowing that like that's going to make things way harder for me in the long run. And also too, that was me just trying to cover up my track that doesn't sound that great. So one thing that I want to encourage younger producers and anyone who's watching this is don't drown your tracks in reverb. Go ahead and use reverb sparingly. Now, this is important. So let's go ahead and take a look at my vocal. So vocals, usually it's like the hardest, it's the culprit of having really bad, reverb and too much reverb. Okay, so let's take a listen to this verse, right?
Time to run it back, I'ma just let go. Do whatever it takes just to stay close. Take the money and the fame.
Okay, so notice I have a couple of buses here. You can totally put a reverb right on the track and use the mix knob on there. I've done that before, but for this track, I ended up using a different approach. So I have a delay track and I have this track, right? And you can see that I have literally no reverb on this. So this is dry, but because I have so much compression, you can hear what my room sounds like.
Time to run it back, I'ma just let go. Do whatever it takes just to stay close.
So there's already like a natural reverb in the track. So I didn't have to add too much more. So with reverb, you have to use it sparingly and use it intentionally. Don't just throw it on everything. So as you notice in the verse, I didn't have any reverb, but then this section is a different section and I actually start kind of singing. So I go ahead and I throw a little bit of reverb. So I have a couple of things going on. I usually put it on a bus, and this is like my sauce. And I'll throw like a little bit of Valhalla delay and then Valhalla room as well with different settings. And then I also subtractive EQ this thing too, so that I'm not getting all this mud in the mix.
I lift my
So it could get very muddy.
but it's not so bright though. Can you show me the way to the place where the fear meets your face and the soul fades away? This time.
So I basically just wanted to make sure that this was like very controlled chaos here. And then I also have another delay here, which is doing something different. And this is kind of like, I'm using it as actually traditional, like a traditional delay. And then I also am doing a couple of things like delay throws and all of these kinds of cool things that are, pretty dope for this kind of track. So we're not going to go deep into that. If you want to know more about it, let me know in the comments below. If you want me to go deep into like vocal production and mixing and that kind of thing, I will totally do that, but only if you let me know in the chat below. And if you haven't hit the subscribe button, you should by now. If you're getting value from this, go ahead and hit the subscribe button and also hit the bell to get notified whenever I drop a new video. So the last thing that is like really important inside of mixing and as a beginner, something that you can do really well, and this will help you become a better engineer and a better mixer, is actually using a reference track. And so you can totally just grab a track that you're really into, that you've downloaded or that you bought, and throw it at the top of your session. And we talked about this in the first section, but like you can use it as a reference to get your arrangement, but then you can also use it as a reference to check your mix against it. Does your track sound like that? And this will actually help you become way better at critical listening and will help you pick out different sounds. And then you'll be able to like you'll hear the track and then you go ahead and mix it. Now I've done this so many times, I would like reference a whole bunch of other tracks, and I know a bunch of producers that still do this because they want to make sure that their mixes are like measuring up. And it's a great practice. And I hope you like this video and subscribe it and share it to a friend that's also learning how to produce. And leave a comment below on what you want me to go deeper in the next video. Peace.